Welcome to The Critique.
Great to be here.
Today's material is a SpeakDuo English learning lesson titled The Real Reason Michael Hates Toby, which uses a pop culture hook to teach advanced vocabulary like feud and nuance.
It's a really fun premise.
It is, but let's jump right in. The lesson's engaging thematic hook surrounding Michael and Toby loses its narrative consistency as the vocabulary exercises progress.
Yeah, that jumped out at me immediately.
Right?
Because the setup is honestly fantastic. The document title builds this incredibly fun pop culture premise, and it perfectly contextualizes the initial examples.
It really does.
Like early on, the author does his brilliant job comparing Michael's aggressively loud energy to Toby being a sad sack.
Yes.
And it uses their whole dynamic to illustrate what an unending feud looks like. It's smart, you know? It draws the learner in using a familiar framework.
Totally.
But then, right when the learner is fully immersed, the practice questions abruptly break that immersion. They pivot to entirely unrelated, generic personal topics.
It's just such a jarring shift.
Yeah.
You're reading about this hilarious fictional workplace rivalry, and then suddenly you hit a practice question for the expression to enforce, and it asks about a house rule for cooking.
Right, out of nowhere.
Or you're practicing the word composite, and it prompts you to combine Thailand and Italy for a dream vacation.
Yeah, it completely abandons the hook.
Exactly. It's like you're watching a great sitcom, and right in the middle of a scene, the characters turn to the camera and ask you to do your laundry.
That is exactly what it feels like.
It discards the exact hook that captured the learner's attention in the first place.
I mean, I understand why the author did it, though. Pedagogically speaking, it's a standard move.
Sure, the personalization aspect.
Right. Teachers and curriculum designers are always taught to connect abstract concepts to the student's personal life. You want to make the vocabulary feel relevant.
Make them use the words to describe their own world.
Exactly. But we really have to think about the psychological impact of such a sudden, unpolished transition, especially for an advanced language learner.
Let's talk about what's actually happening in the brain there.
Okay.
When you establish a specific narrative universe, especially one as culturally resonant and humorous as a popular workplace comedy, you are doing something vital. You are lowering the learner's affective filter.
Oh, absolutely.
They are entertained, their guard is down, and suddenly they are highly receptive to complex linguistic input.
They're invested.
Right. So the weakness isn't that the lesson asks personal questions. The weakness lies entirely in the clumsy nature of the pivot.
Yeah, moving directly from the fictional animosity of two beloved characters into a mundane question about household chores.
It severs the cognitive link that you just spent 3 pages establishing. It feels less like a natural progression of thought and much more like an accidental disruption of the theme.
So, how do we fix that without losing the personal connection the author clearly wants to achieve?
Well, the move here is to maintain the narrative wrapper of the TV show throughout the entire sequence of practice questions.
Right. Just gently blend the character-driven scenarios with the learner's personal reflection.
Exactly. Keep that thematic momentum rolling from the title page all the way through to the final breakout room exercise.
It's all about creating a bridge.
Yes, advanced learners actually thrive when they are asked to manipulate new vocabulary within a specific, constrained context first, before they apply it broadly to their unscripted lives.
So, concrete example. If they really want to drive this home, instead of asking about a generic house rule regarding washing dishes to teach to enforce,
They could just ask, what is a silly office rule Michael might try to enforce, and how would Toby react?
I love that.
Right. It keeps the learner firmly grounded in the engaging premise while still demanding that they actively construct a sentence using the target vocabulary.
You're still getting the grammar practice, and you're still getting the vocabulary production, but you aren't breaking the spell.
Exactly.
Another great place to apply this is with the phrase to sum up. Right now, the material just bluntly asks the learner to sum up their entire personality in one word.
Which is a massive philosophical question dropped out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it completely ignores the context. A much stronger, more organic approach would be to ask the learner to first sum up Toby's personality in one word, and then sum up their own.
That two-step process is incredibly effective.
It really is. By bridging the gap that way, the learner first anchors the vocabulary word to the established context. They sum up Toby, maybe using the word sad sack from earlier, and then they immediately turn the lens on themselves.
It maintains the total immersion of the lesson while still achieving the personal relevance the author was aiming for.
Now, I know a common pushback here might be about audience familiarity. Like, what if the learner hasn't seen the show? Is there a risk that leaning too hard into the TV premise alienates them?
Sure, that's always a minor risk with pop culture.
But the material already heavily relies on this dynamic in the exposition anyway. The author has already committed to the bit.
Right.
Backing out of it halfway through the document doesn't help the people who haven't seen the show. It just confuses the people who have.
Exactly. Committing to it fully in the practice phase strengthens the internal logic of the whole document. It elevates the lesson from a standard fill-in-the-blank vocabulary worksheet into a cohesive, immersive learning experience. Speaking of things that break the immersion, the narrative shift actually isn't the only thing pulling the learner out of the zone here.
No, it isn't.
The persistent interweaving of promotional material throughout the core educational slides significantly disrupts the learning momentum.
Oh, the layout, yes. Let's really unpack the specific weakness in the visual flow here, because it's a major hurdle.
It is.
You have these details promoting the iOS app download, the 7-day free trial, and the personalized AI feedback features scattered completely sporadically. They're just sitting there between the core vocabulary definitions and the interactive breakout rooms.
It's very disruptive.
For example, you'll be reading a slide defining a feud, and immediately below it is an aggressive prompt to download the app.
Right. Later, right in the middle of reading the instructions for a speaking exercise, you are interrupted by detailed bullet points about accessing past lessons and matching with global partners.
It creates a massive amount of cognitive friction. It violently interrupts the pedagogical flow, pulling the learner out of a focused educational mindset and forcing them into a transactional consumer mindset.
And as a result, the document starts to feel much more like a disjointed sales pitch than a focused educational tool.
I can almost guarantee you that a marketing team had a hand in this design.
Oh, absolutely. The logic is usually, we need eyes on the upgrade button. Put it where they're looking the most.
Yep. And on paper, the material makes a really strong case for utilizing these AI features. Highlighting the ability to get instant feedback on spoken sentences or tracking your grammar and pronunciation is great.
It is great.
But from an instructional design standpoint, this scattered placement actively works against the learner's ability to concentrate.
Right. Let's talk about cognitive load theory for a second.
Okay.
An advanced language learner is already utilizing massive amounts of working memory just to decode the nuance of a new word, process the context, and formulate a spoken response.
Their mental bandwidth is near capacity.
Exactly. When the document continuously demands their attention for bright, shiny marketing material right before a speaking task, it introduces extraneous cognitive load. You are basically overflowing their mental buffer.
That makes total sense.
So the weakness isn't that the promotional material exists. Obviously, highlighting a free trial and unlimited practice sessions is vital for a platform to grow and survive. The weakness is the highly intrusive nature of its placement.
Yeah.
Every time the learner gears up for a conversational prompt, they are distracted by a visual reminder to pull out their credit card. It completely dilutes the educational impact of the surrounding content.
So the fix here is structural. We need to consolidate all of those marketing and feature highlights into distinct, visually separated sections strictly at the beginning and the end of the lesson.
Yes. By compartmentalizing the promotional content, you protect the sanctity of the core educational space.
The user can focus entirely on mastering complex words like exacerbate and animosity without visual or cognitive interruptions constantly nagging at the periphery of their vision.
Some might argue that consolidating the promotions decreases their visibility, but that's actually a misconception. From a purely psychological standpoint, consolidating them increases their effectiveness.
Because they actually have the mental space to consider the offer.
Exactly. You are presenting the pitch when the user is mentally prepared to actually evaluate it, either right before the cognitive heavy lifting begins, or better yet, right after they have successfully experienced the value of your lesson.
That is such a good point. If we want to map this out practically, the author should take that slide detailing the 7-day free trial, The one with all the bullet points on unlimited sessions, choosing partners from preferred regions, and accessing past lesson histories?
And move it entirely.
Move it entirely to a dedicated Continue Your Learning section at the very end of the document. Also, those specific slides showcasing the personalized AI feedback interface, which visually display the grammar corrections, should be grouped alongside that final call to action.
And on the flip side, protect the educational sections fiercely. Keep the breakout room slides purely focused on the conversational prompts.
Right. Strip out any QR codes, logos, or app download reminders from the spaces where the learner is meant to be actively speaking with their partner.
By creating a hard physical and visual boundary between learning time and promotional time, the document will flow so much more naturally. Think about the user journey.
Okay.
They experience a seamless flow from the pop culture hook, through the deep dive into the vocabulary, straight into the practice, and finally they conclude with a highly relevant, uninterrupted pitch for the pro features.
It feels earned rather than forced.
Precisely.
So if we're cleaning up the visual flow and the narrative flow, we really need to look at the linguistic flow next.
Yes, absolutely.
The advanced vocabulary list misses a critical opportunity to deepen learner comprehension by failing to group terms thematically or highlight contextual usage.
This is arguably the most important pedagogical tweak they could make. The foundational material here is genuinely strong, and the actual selection of words is fantastic.
It really is a great list.
But the presentation leaves a lot of value on the table. The material currently presents emotionally heavy, conflict-oriented words like animosity, feud, and exacerbate in complete isolation, placing them directly alongside completely unrelated, neutral terms like ad-lib, oblige, and composite.
It's basically just an unsorted list.
Exactly.
And while the definitions provided in the text are highly accurate, they correctly define nuance as a very slight difference in appearance, meaning, sound, or expression. They lack the surrounding structural context required for high-level language acquisition.
Advanced learners need so much more than just isolated dictionary definitions accompanied by a single example sentence.
They need to understand the complex relationships between these words and how they naturally collocate in professional or conversational English.
You hit the nail on the head. The core issue here is a lack of lexical mapping.
Lexical mapping. Right.
When a learner encounters a highly specific idiom like a sad sack right next to an abstract noun like a composite, their brain is forced to encode these disparate concepts as completely separate entities.
But that isn't how human memory actually works.
No, it isn't. Our brains store vocabulary in vast interconnected webs of association. By presenting a randomized or unsorted list, the document ignores the mechanics of how the brain naturally acquires and retains advanced language.
Right. We are essentially asking the learner to build their own mental map from scratch.
Which is a lot to ask.
The fact that a feud is a prolonged argument and that exacerbate means to make a problem worse, they still might not realize that these two words pair beautifully together in the wild.
Exactly.
The weakness is that the material forces the learner to do all the heavy lifting of discovering these linguistic relationships entirely on their own. For a lesson aimed at advanced speakers, that is a massive missed opportunity.
The way to elevate this is to completely reorganize the vocabulary into thematic clusters and provide brief comparative insights alongside common collocations.
Just that one change.
That one change will drastically elevate the pedagogical value of the material. By clustering words that share a semantic field, you allow the learner to mentally map the vocabulary together in a way that makes it infinitely easier to recall during spontaneous conversation.
Think about it from the perspective of teaching nuance itself. When words are clustered together, the instructor can explicitly highlight the subtle differences between them.
Right.
An advanced learner doesn't just need to know what animosity means, they need to know how it differs in intensity, duration, or context from a feud.
Providing collocations, which are just the words that naturally and frequently appear alongside the target vocabulary, bridges the gap between understanding a word passively and wielding it actively like a native speaker.
Let's paint a picture of how this clustering can be achieved on the page.
Okay.
The author should group the words feud, animosity, and to exacerbate into a clearly labeled specific cluster. You could title it something simple like workplace conflict.
I like that.
Within this cluster, the material shouldn't just define the words. It should explicitly contrast them, show the learner the difference between a long-running feud, which is active and external, versus a deep animosity, which is an internal feeling.
And then demonstrate how a specific action, like a careless miscommunication, might exacerbate a feud.
Exactly. That is such a powerful way to structure it. You're giving them the whole ecosystem of the conflict.
It's so much more useful.
Another great example would be taking nuance, composite, and ad-lib and grouping them into a separate cluster, perhaps themed around creative expression or performance, especially since the text uses examples relating to acting, scripts, and character creation for these specific words.
That makes perfect sense.
The material could provide collocations showing how an actor might capture the nuance of a character or how a performance is a composite of different influences.
Grouping them this way deliberately helps the learner map the words together in their memory. It fundamentally changes how the information is absorbed, retained, and eventually used.
Implementing that thematic clustering dramatically shifts the entire tone of the document.
It really does. It upgrades it from a simple reference sheet into a highly curated, expert-level lesson plan. It actively guides the learner's cognitive process rather than just dumping data on them and wishing them luck.
Yeah.
It fulfills the promise made to the advanced learner at the very beginning of the document. It moves beyond just teaching them what a word means and actually teaches them how the language behaves.
It's the difference between handing someone a pile of bricks and handing them a blueprint. Both are useful, but only one helps you build a house efficiently.
Well said. To quickly recap the strengths of the material submitted today, the document features a highly engaging premise with an excellent selection of advanced vocabulary.
It really is a strong foundation.
The use of a popular television dynamic to contextualize complex words immediately captures the learner's attention and sets a great, relaxed tone for learning.
And to summarize our actionable suggestions for elevating this material to the next level, first, weave that television show theme consistently into all the practice questions. Don't drop the pop culture hook halfway through. Instead, blend those character-driven scenarios with the learner's personal reflections to maintain total immersion.
Second, consolidate the app promotions and trial information strictly to the end of the document. This protects the learning flow, respects the user's working memory, and prevents cognitive friction during the core educational exercises.
Finally, cluster related vocabulary words together thematically and add comparative insights and collocations. Grouping words like feud and animosity under a workplace conflict banner will drastically deepen the educational value and help learners map the concepts efficiently in their memory.
We invite the listener to implement these suggestions, refine the structure and thematic flow of the exercises, and submit the revised work back in for another critique. Keep challenging yourself to elevate your educational design. Thank you for sharing your material with us.